The fluorescent lights above the nurse's station flickered once, casting a cold, sterile glow across the empty hallway, and for a brief moment, Emily Carter thought she might finally collapse. Her feet throbbed inside worn-out shoes, her back ached from 12 straight hours of lifting patients, and her eyes burned with exhaustion. She had just signed off her final chart when the automatic doors at the end of the corridor burst open with a force that echoed like thunder through the quiet hospital wing. Heavy boots pounded against the tile floor in perfect rhythm, and before she could even turn fully around, she saw them, a group of Navy SEALs in uniform, moving with purpose, scanning the room as if they were still on a battlefield. Then, to her shock, they stopped directly in front of her, and one of them stepped forward, stood at attention, and addressed her as "Ma'am. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that small acts can change lives forever, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts." Emily froze, unsure if she had misheard. No one had called her "ma'am" with that kind of respect in years. Most days, she was invisible, just another overworked nurse trying to survive the chaos of understaffed shifts and endless emergencies. Her life had become a cycle of responsibility and sacrifice ever since her husband died 5 years earlier, leaving her alone with a mountain of medical debt and a son to raise. She had taken extra shifts, skipped meals, and sold her car just to keep their apartment. Nursing wasn't just her job, it was her survival. Yet despite how much she gave to others, she often went home feeling empty, wondering if any of it truly mattered. The leader of the SEAL team held out a small, worn photograph. Even from a distance, Emily recognized the image instantly, a younger version of herself in scrubs, kneeling beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of a teenage boy with tubes running from his arms. Her heart skipped. That photo had been taken nearly 10 years ago, during one of the darkest times in her career. The memory rushed back with overwhelming clarity. Back then, Emily had been assigned to the trauma unit, where patients came in broken from accidents, violence, and war. One night, a young recruit had been rushed in after a training accident. His injuries were catastrophic: internal bleeding, crushed ribs, and a prognosis that left doctors quietly shaking their heads. He had no family nearby, no one to advocate for him. Emily had stayed long after her shift ended, sitting beside him while machines beeped rhythmically in the dim room. She had spoken softly to him, encouraging him to fight, telling him that someone believed in him even if the odds were against him. For days, she returned during breaks just to check on him, adjust his pillow, or simply hold his hand so he wouldn't feel alone. Most staff had considered it just another hopeless case. But Emily had refused to treat him like a statistic. She remembered the moment he finally opened his eyes after surgery, confused and terrified, and how she had reassured him with calm confidence she barely felt herself. She had told him that survival wasn't just about medicine, it was about willpower, courage, and the belief that tomorrow could still exist. Over the following weeks, she had celebrated every tiny improvement as if it were a miracle. Eventually, he was transferred out for long-term rehabilitation, and life moved on. Emily never knew what happened to him. In a hospital, patients often disappeared from your life without closure, leaving only memories behind. Now, standing in front of her years later, was that same patient, stronger, taller, wearing the insignia of an elite warrior. The realization hit her like a wave, and suddenly the exhaustion in her bones was replaced by something deeper, almost indescribable. The young man she once helped keep alive had not only survived, he had thrived. The SEAL explained that during his recovery, when pain and doubt nearly broke him, he had remembered her words. He had clung to the belief that someone saw value in his life when he couldn't see it himself. That belief carried him through rehabilitation, through brutal training, and eventually into the ranks of the Navy SEALs. He told his team about the nurse who refused to give up on him, and when they learned she still worked at the same hospital, they insisted on finding her. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, not out of sadness, but from a profound sense of validation she had never experienced before. For years, she had questioned whether her sacrifices mattered. She had wondered if the endless hours, the emotional strain, and the physical exhaustion were worth it. Yet here was living proof that a moment of compassion could ripple outward for years, shaping a destiny she never imagined. The hallway seemed quieter now, almost reverent, as the team presented her with a small plaque engraved with words of gratitude. But what overwhelmed her most wasn't the recognition, it was the realization that kindness had a lifespan far longer than she ever understood. The young recruit she once comforted had become a symbol of resilience, and somehow, she had been part of that journey. Memories of her husband surfaced unexpectedly. He had always told her that nursing wasn't just about medicine, it was about humanity. After he died, she had struggled to hold on to that belief, buried under grief and financial pressure. But in that moment, surrounded by soldiers who respected her, she felt his presence again, a reminder that purpose doesn't disappear just because life becomes hard. One of the SEALs handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter written by the former patient, describing how her encouragement had given him strength when he felt worthless. He wrote about nights in rehabilitation when he considered giving up, but her voice echoed in his mind, reminding him he was stronger than his injuries. He credited her not just with saving his life, but with helping him discover who he could become. Emily's hands trembled as she read. She realized that while she had spent years believing she was barely holding things together, she had unknowingly been planting seeds of hope in others. Seeds that had grown into courage, determination, and even heroism. Time seemed to slow as hospital staff gathered around, watching the emotional scene unfold. For once, Emily wasn't just the tired nurse at the end of a shift. She was someone who had changed a life, and through that life, countless others. As the SEAL team prepared to leave, the young man saluted her, a gesture filled with respect and gratitude. Emily instinctively returned it, though tears blurred her vision. In that silent exchange, she felt something inside her heal, a wound she hadn't even realized was there. Life didn't magically become easier after that day. She still worked long shifts, still struggled financially, and still faced the daily emotional weight of healthcare. But something fundamental had changed. She carried herself differently, with the quiet confidence that her presence mattered. Every patient she cared for became another opportunity to make a difference, even if she never saw the outcome. Months later, when her son asked why she kept working so hard despite everything, she told him that helping people wasn't about recognition. It was about believing that even the smallest act of kindness could echo far beyond what we see. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us of the power of compassion. And before we reach the ending, here's a special request. Comment the word hope below if you believe one person can truly change another person's life. Years passed, and Emily eventually moved into a leadership role at the hospital, mentoring younger nurses who felt overwhelmed just like she once had. Whenever someone doubted their impact, she would share a version of that story, not to boast, but to remind them that they might never fully know the importance of their work. One evening, long after the encounter with the SEAL team, she received another letter. Inside was a photograph of a group of soldiers standing together overseas, smiling despite the harsh environment. On the back, a simple message read, "You are the reason I never gave up. Because of you, I get to stand here today." Emily placed the photo in her locker, next to a picture of her husband. Two reminders of love, sacrifice, and purpose, the forces that had carried her through life's hardest seasons. The nurse who once felt invisible had discovered something extraordinary: kindness is never wasted. It travels through time, through people, through moments we may never witness, shaping futures in ways we cannot imagine. And sometimes, when you least expect it, the world finds a way to come back and thank you. If this story moved you, please engage with the video, like, comment, and share, because your interaction helps spread messages of hope and humanity to others who may need it most. And as Emily learned that unforgettable night in the hospital hallway, the greatest recognition isn't fame or awards. It's knowing that because you cared, someone else found the strength to live.